I hate theater. Well, it's so disappointing, isn't it? You know what I do when I'm sitting in a darkened theater waiting for the show to begin? I pray. Oh, dear God, please let it be a good show. And let it be short. Oh, Lord in heaven, please. 2 hours is fine. 3 hours is too much. And keep the actors out of the audience, God. I didn't pay good money to have the fourth wall come crashing down around my ears. I just want a story and a few good songs that will take me away. I just want to be entertained. I mean, isn't that the point? Amen. You know, there was a time when people sat in darkened theaters and thought to themselves, what have George and Ira Gershwin got for us tonight? Or, can Cole Porter pull it off again? Can you imagine? Now it's, please, Elton John, must we continue this charade? It used to be, sitting there, in the dark, you knew that when the show began, you would be taken to another world, a world full of color and music and glamour, and you thought to yourself, my God, when are they going to bring up the lights? Oh, how things have changed. Hello, how are we today? I'm feeling a little blue myself. You know, a little anxious for no particular reason. A little sad that I should feel anxious at this age. You know, a little self-conscious anxiety resulting in non-specific sadness. A state that I call blue. Anyway, whenever I'm feeling this way, blue, I like to listen to my music. So I was going through my records this morning. Yes, records. And I was about to put on the soundtrack recording of Meredith Willson's The Music Man. I had a craving for a young Ronnie Howard. But then I said no. Let's have a treat. Let's disappear for a while into the decadent world of the 1920s, when the champagne flowed while the caviar chilled and the whole world was a party. Well, for the wealthy, anyway. So I dug about, and what did I find but one of my favorite shows, Gable and Stein's The Drowsy Chaperone. Remember? Music by Julie Gable, lyrics by Sidney Stein. It's a 2-record set, remastered from the original recording made in 1928. It's the full show with the original cast, including Beatrice Stockwell as the chaperone. Isn't she elegant? And this is a full 15 years before she became Dame Beatrice Stockwell. Can you believe it? Let me read to you what it says on the back. It says, mix-ups, mayhem, and a gay wedding. Of course, the phrase gay wedding has a different meaning now, but back then it just been fun. And that's what this show is, fun. So, would you indulge me? Would you let me play the record for you now? I was hoping you'd say yes. You hear that static? I love that sound. To me, it's the sound of a time machine starting up. All right now, let's visualize. Imagine, if you will, it's November 1928. You've just arrived at the doors of the Morosco Theater in New York. It's very cold. Remember when it used to be cold in November? Not anymore. November is the new August now. It's global warming. We're all doomed. Anyway, it's very cold, and a heavy gray sleet is falling from the sky, but you don't care because you're going to see a Broadway show. Listen, isn't this wonderful? It helps if you close your eyes. Overtures. Overtures are out of style now. I miss them. It's the show's way of welcoming you. Hello, welcome. The meal will be served shortly, but in the meantime, would you like an appetizer? That's what an overture is, a musical appetizer, a poo-poo platter of tunes, if you will. Oh, something new. What could it be? Sounds like a dance tune. Kind of rollicking. Maybe involving pirates. Don't worry, there are no pirates. Now, here it comes. The moment when the music starts to build and you know you're only seconds away from being transported. The curtain is going up. I can't wait. Well, there you have it. All the guests have arrived. We have a bride who's giving up the stage for love, her debonair bridegroom, a harried producer, jovial gangsters posing as pastry chefs, a flaky Corinne, a Latin Lothario, and an aviatrix, what we now call a lesbian. And of course, my favorite character, the Drowsy Chaperone. What more do you need for an evening's entertainment? Song, song. Wasn't that wonderful? And we will ding along. I don't even know what that means. All right. I'll lead you through the record as best I can. Don't worry, it won't be hard to follow. So, we begin with a welcome from the love-struck groom. It's bad luck. I hope you heard that because that's the plot, basically. Hang on for the ride. So, the bride and groom are whisked away, and we turn our attention to the B plot, which involves the producer. A little annotation. Kitty and Felzig were a couple in real life, Jack and Sadie Adler. Now, this is a familiar comedic construct, a stupid woman and her long-suffering companion. Well, she appears stupid, but in the end, she does something clever and makes everyone wonder whether it's all just an act. The irony here is that Sadie actually was quite stupid. Jack had to explain all the jokes to her, apparently, but still, she had a wonderful career on the stage. At that time, the theater was the only place where stupid people could earn a decent living. This was before television, of course. The gangsters were played by the interchangeable vaudeville duo, the Tall Brothers, John and Peter Tall. They were born Abram and Mendel Moslauskowitz, but were renamed at Ellis Island by a sarcastic immigration official. They were an early example of the typical Broadway gangster, full of wordplay and stylized movement, not very intimidating. Unless you find dancers intimidating, which I do, for reasons that would not be appropriate for this situation. I always thought that moment was a little overplayed. So, with the story well on its way, let's go to the groom's room. Pearly whites. The groom was played by the dashing Percy Hyman. He started out as the Albright toothpaste man. His fabulous smile adorned every tube. Albright was hugely popular in the early 20s because it contained cocaine. It's true. If you looked at the label, it was the 5th ingredient down, right after sugar. Anyway, it wasn't long before he became a huge matinee idol. I love Percy Hyman. Now, some people say he was a bad actor, but to those people, I say, shut up. Percy Hyman was a wonderful performer. I like to think of him panting and sweating after a long dance routine. He's still alive, you know. I saw him on the news recently celebrating his 110th birthday. To say that the passing years had taken their toll on him would be a grotesque understatement. They wheeled him out, and he had that wide-eyed expression of pained confusion that God reserves for the very, very old on their birthdays. You know, the one that says, "Who are you? Who am I? Why is this cake on fire?" You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, just ignore it. It does this occasionally. It rings. It'll stop soon. Just ignore it. What? What do you want? Oh well, that's it. The moment is ruined. Thank you. Thank you, life. It's like a cell phone going off in a theater. God, I hate that. Hello? What are you doing? Oh, I'm at the theater ruining the moment. How about you? Oh, I couldn't get out tonight, so I thought I'd ruin the moment by proxy. Sorry, let's just shake that off. Let's go back in our minds to 1928. They didn't have cell phones in 1928, but I'm sure they had something for the ruining of moments. Bugles or something. So, the scene shifts and we find the bride, the glamorous Janet Vandergraff, entertaining questions from reporters as she lounges by the pool. That was Jane Roberts as the bride. She was the Oops girl. Remember? Surely you remember the Oops girl. Don't you people read? She was billed as the girl whose sexual energy was so great that it caused the men around her to have accidents, spill their drinks, drive their cars into streets, and she would go, oops. Well, I'm not really doing it justice, but people ate it up. She made a whole series of films. Oops, The Oops Girl, Oops Girl Come Home, and Oops Girl at Sea, which won an Oscar for special effects. In walks Aldolfo, self-proclaimed ladies' man. Aldolfo is played by former silent film star and world-class alcoholic Roman Bartelli. He was the one who later drank himself to death at his chateau in Nice. Remember? It was 5 days before they found the body, and by that time it had been partially consumed by his poodles. Well, he was only partially consumed. Roman Bartelli, chewing the scenery. You certainly couldn't get away with a performance like that nowadays, could you? Roman Bartelli, chewing the scenery. You certainly couldn't get away with a performance like that nowadays, could you? Mature contemporary audiences are too sophisticated to enjoy broad stereotypes on the stage. So we banished them to Disney. Let the children sort it out. I hate this scene. You can see where this is going, can't you? It's really just a series of spit takes. You know, in some ways, the Drowsy Chaperone was quite progressive. A black actress played the aviatrix, for instance. You poop. Yes, some elements were quite progressive. Others were stale in 1928. You know what? I'm going to skip ahead. Gimlet. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what was that routine doing in the show? Well, it's very simple. There's a song coming up, and they needed something to allow for the set change. It's mechanics. It's like pornography. Well, let me explain what I meant by that. In pornography, the story is simplistic. How do I pay for this pizza? Being the classic example. My point is, as in a musical, the story exists only to connect the longer, more engaging production numbers. What? Well, what kind of society do we live in if we can't discuss the similarities between pornography and musical theater? Whirlwind. This is a really interesting scene. This is the only time in the show that Jane Roberts and Beatrice Stockwell are alone together on stage. Jane Roberts was an emerging star, but Beatrice Stockwell was already well established and a force to be reckoned with. Now, Beatrice Stockwell was famous for her rousing anthems. She entertained and inspired the troops in every major world conflict up to and including the Falklands War. Of course, by that time she was in her late 80s, and her anthems didn't so much arouse as stupefy. Still, she demanded that a rousing anthem be included in every show she ever did, even if it wasn't appropriate. But you just couldn't say no to her. That's star power. in the middle of the song, Antarctica, oh please. Antarctica, oh please, she finishes. Don't you just love her? Basically, she sings a rousing anthem about alcoholism. That's what I love about her. She just does her own thing when she wants, regardless of the needs and concerns of others. My mother was like that. Look who it is. It's Aldolfo come to seduce the bride. Try not to think of the poodles while you're listening to this part. This was my mother's favorite number in the show. I think it was her secret fantasy to be swept off her feet by a Latin lover. I mean, a real Latin lover, not a buffoon. But that's what musicals are all about, right? Romantic fantasy, falling in love at the drop of a hat, spontaneous tangoing, suddenly finding yourself in an insanely romantic setting. Well, it seems that the blindfold and the fake French accent have led to a terrible misunderstanding. What a mess! Will it work out in the end? Of course it will. It's not real, it's a musical. Everything always works out in musicals. In the real world, nothing ever works out, and the only people who burst into song are the hopelessly deranged. And that's that. The curtain falls, and it's time for the intermission. At least it would be, if we were actually sitting in the Morosco Theater watching The Drowsy Chaperone. Which, of course, we're not. I don't like intermissions. They ruin the magic, you know. They yank you back into reality. One moment you're lost in a glamorous world of music and romance, and then bang! You're surrounded by strangers, crinkling candy wrappers, nattering about the lack of women's restrooms. It's cruel. Oh, it's a power bar. I have a bit of a blood sugar issue. I have to eat small meals all day long or I get jittery. I know it's rude, but you wouldn't like the alternative, believe you me, believe you me. I remember my wedding day. I didn't eat breakfast, and the ceremony wasn't until 4 in the